Hey English 10, me again. This is the second video for the week. We just did the one for P paragraph. But now I want to get a little bit into the actual unit that we're doing, the content for the unit, and that is culture. Okay, so we're going to be talking about culture. So first we have to define what culture is, because sometimes there's some confusion between like culture and race and ethnicity and what those different things are. Okay, so we need to distinguish what we're talking about. And I want you to know, like, by the end of the quarter, our final project is going to be for you guys to create, I think we're going to do a website again where you identify aspects of your culture and you talk about those. Okay, so the first thing we need to discuss, though, and we need to make really clear, is the difference between race, ethnicity, and culture, because they're kind of interwoven, but they're not the same thing. Okay, so race is literally just your skin tone. It is the color of your skin. Okay, that is the easiest way to define it. And so, like, it really doesn't tell you much about culture, right? Because you can have somebody with like dark brown skin and they can be Mexican or Peruvian or Puerto Rican, Argentinian. Okay, there's a lot of different cultures and they're not the same, right? They're not the same. If you ask somebody like from Mexico about Puerto Rican traditions, maybe they'll know some of it, but that's not theirs. That's not their culture. Okay, so race is really not anything that we're going to spend time discussing in this because it's not a relevant point to what you're talking about. Okay, I know there are people as light-skinned as me who are from Mexico and their culture is Mexican culture. Okay, so that is not something that we're going to spend a lot of time discussing because it doesn't need to be discussed for what we're looking at. Okay, there's different times and places to distinguish race and do all that stuff, but that's not really relevant to this class and what we're doing. What is more relevant than race, actually, and what needs to be considered more is your ethnicity. Ethnicity is like your family's country of origin. So like, what country did your family come from? And what traditions were carried down, because there's a lot of traditions that get carried into like your ethnicity and your culture, and those two kind of build up and work together. Okay, so like for example, I'm Italian. Okay, that's my ethnicity. My great grandmother came from Italy, and now I'm only at this point like a quarter Italian, but I was raised with Italian traditions. I was raised with grandparents who spoke Italian fluently. I was raised with Italian food, Italian mannerisms. Have you guys noticed I talk with my hands a lot? That is such an Italian mannerism. Okay, I'm loud when I don't mean to be. Also a very Italian mannerism. Okay, so your ethnicity. So are you from, is your family from Mexico, Guatemala? I know Puerto Rico is one that we have several students who are Puerto Rican sometimes, Salvadorian. Okay, some of you guys, maybe it's Irish, British, Italian. I know we still have a few Italians on campus. Okay, so that's something that we need to really you need to consider and identify first, is what is your ethnicity. Okay, and then sometimes there's these weird differences between like Mexican American or Italian American, and then like true like Mexican ethnicity and Mexican traditions. So some of this stuff has been adjusted as it's been incorporated into American culture, right? So like there's some things, like the way my family makes some Italian food isn't really your traditional Italian food, but it comes out of that old Italian food. Okay, and I'm sure there's some other things that you guys could probably think of that are different if you were to say go back down to like Mexico or Guatemala. Some of you I know probably travel every year at Christmas time to visit family in some other countries, and maybe things are just a little different there, right? Like you just notice it's still the same food, but maybe it tastes a little different. Maybe it's made a little different. So you have some of these merging of ethnicities, especially in second and third generations. Okay? So ethnicity, where your family's from, like what country your family comes from, and the things that you take out of that. Now, culture. Culture is where it gets really interesting, because culture includes elements of your ethnicity, like food, music. Did I mention food? Food is really a big one for culture. That's how I love to identify and learn cultures, is through their food. But I just like food, so there's that too. So food, dancing, music, maybe style of dress. Okay, a lot of cultures have like traditional dresses and traditional dances and things like that. Those are all part of your culture. And then there's other things that you aren't necessarily raised with because of your ethnicity, but that you find become a part of you. They're part of your identity. And that can include like social groups. So if you have an interest or a hobby, skateboarding, right? There is skater culture. Surfers, there's totally like a surf culture. Anime totally has its own culture, its own scene. What else can I think of? If you're into like goth or metal, okay, that's totally its own scene. I'm trying to think of other things that might be a little more popular right now, and I'm feeling very old because I'm having a hard time connecting. Or thinking of like other scenes that you guys might be into. But anything where it's like something that you kind of use to define you, that is part of your culture. Okay, so one element of that is going to be your ethnicity, but that's not the only element. Other elements are going to be ones that you choose. Things that you like, groups and hobbies that you fall into, and those are also part of your culture. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this because it's about 8 minutes long, and we will discuss more on Monday. But when it comes to culture, the 3 things I really want you to think about. What do you get from your ethnicity? Okay, what are traditions and stuff that come because that's the way your parents were raised, because that's what your grandparents do, and that's what you were taught. Because I guarantee you, all of you guys have some stuff like that. And then, actually I'm going to go with 2 things. So what you brought, what was given to you, what you were raised in with your ethnicity, and then the cultures that you have chosen to be part of. Hobbies, things that you have found that you are into. Even rap has a culture. Hip hop has a culture. And if you're sitting there like, well, I like hip hop music, but like, I mean, I don't really identify with the hip hop world, then that's not your culture. That's just something you like. But if you're like, no, I really am into this, and I try to embody it, and I live it, and I identify with it, then that's probably something that's part of your culture. Okay? One of the ones I can think of it, I can picture it because it was real prominent when I was in school, is skater culture. So like, you know, the guys are going down to the skate parks every day, and there's a whole vibe around that. There's a look. Like if I said he's a skater dude, you'd probably have a look that popped into your mind. At least I do still. All right, so culture, I want you to think about and consider your ethnicity, what you get, what you kind of inherited from your family's traditions, and then the elements of culture, the parts of culture that you have chosen in your life. All right? Okay, guys, I'm going to talk to you guys tomorrow. See you then.